Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. As always on Fridays, Amber is here with us, which I love. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's great to be with you.
I love your dress. I think we're like bouncing off of each other.
I like it. We've got the cool tones.
Yeah, getting ready for the fall.
That's right.
I wasn't ready yet, but here we go. Coming up on Rising, Washington, D.C. is suing President Trump for deploying the National Guard in the district.
Plus, the Trump administration says that they're renaming the Department of Defense.
And Democrats outside of California seem to be excited about Governor Newsom, to the point of, quote, obsession. But first, Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. was in the hot seat yesterday during a fiery Senate hearing. Kennedy faced tough grilling from both parties on vaccines, COVID, and more. The hearing comes after a major shakeup at the CDC, where former director Susan Monterez and other high-level officials departed the agency. Now, 11 out of the 12 Senate Finance Democrats are demanding RFK Jr. resign from his post. It was, by all standards, an unusually tense hearing. Let's take a look.
What I said was accurate. What you said were lies. You described people
Senator,
moving the Titanic.
Are you saying that the mRNA vaccine has never been associated with myocarditis or pericarditis in teenagers?
I am simply.
Is that what you're trying to tell us?
I am simply trying to say that the people that you have put on that panel, after firing the entire.
You're evading the question.
No, I'm asking the questions here,
You're
Mr.
evading
Kennedy.
that question.
I'm asking the questions,
I
Mr.
asked
Kennedy.
you a question.
I'm asking the questions for Mr. Kennedy on behalf of parents and schools and teachers all over the United States of America who deserve so much better than your leadership.
And Medicaid will still
tell the
pay.
head of the CDC that if she refused to sign off on your changes to the childhood vaccine schedule, that she had to resign?
No, I told her that she had to resign because I asked her, are you a trustworthy person? And she said no.
Sheesh. In another tense exchange, Senator Mark Warren also grilled Kennedy on how many people died from COVID, but Kennedy gave no response.
And it wasn't just Democrats. Republicans are also signaling to President Trump that Kennedy is apparently on thin ice. Some GOP members showed their disapproval of the secretary yesterday during the hearing. Let's take a look.
I support vaccines. I'm a doctor. Vaccines work. Secretary Kennedy, in your confirmation hearings, you promised to uphold the highest standards for vaccines. Since then, I've grown deeply concerned.
Mr. Secretary, do you agree with me that the president deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed?
Yeah, absolutely, Senator.
So let me ask you, but you just told Senator Bennett that the COVID vaccine killed more people than COVID.
Wait,
that was a statement.
I did not say that.
Okay, then let me ask, because you also
Senator, I just want to make clear, I did not say that.
We'll check.
Senator, I didn't politicize ASAP. I depoliticized it. The Congress has been investigating ASAP.
All over the country, Mr. Secretary, scientists and doctors are saying otherwise. They're all wrong, too. They're all lying, according to you. I don't get letters from thousands of people who are not political saying that this set of changes is going to damage American healthcare, and particularly these healthcare agencies, for decades to come.
Despite all of that fire, President Trump still praised Kennedy after the hearing. Let's take a look.
Well, I didn't get to watch the hearings today, but he's a very good person. And he means very well, and he's got some little different ideas. It's not your standard talk, I would say, and that has to do with medical and vaccines. But if you look at what's going on in the world with health, and look at this country also with regard to health, I like the fact that he's different.
Meanwhile, RFK Jr. fired CDC Director Susan Monterez. She's speaking out now about her departure in a Wall Street Journal op-ed published yesterday called Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the CDC and Me. She writes, quote, public health shouldn't be partisan. Vaccines have saved millions of lives under administrations of both parties. Parents deserve a CDC they can trust to put children above politics, evidence above ideology, and facts above fear. Now she adds, quote, I was fired for holding that line. But the line doesn't disappear with me. It runs through every parent deciding whether to vaccinate a child, every physician counseling parents, and every American who demands accountability. I was watching that hearing yesterday like, a little bit scratching nails on a chalkboard because of how contentious it was, but also just like so tense because I think for 3 hours straight we saw real criticalness of both. Well, some people actually still agreed with RFK, but I mean, just some of the Republicans, the criticism seemed like they were kind of fed up, even specifically about, like, I think John Thune was like, listen, the fact that we went through this whole confirmation hearing and wasted so much time getting Susan Monterez in position for weeks later, you to fire her, you know how much it takes to get somebody who Democrats largely disagree with confirmed. So I think they're just frustrated, and I think to describe RFK's leadership as a whole has been quite chaotic because the idea of, embracing ideology over facts and opening up Pandora's box from his history of being anti-vax and then going into getting confirmed in this position and saying he's totally going to change that, not going to be anti-vax, and then providing a discourse that makes people have the conversation again about whether they trust vaccines based on the failure of COVID. I mean, the COVID way it was handled was like the disaster that it was, right? People did not know what they were doing, and we found that out later, unfortunately. But it kind of is starting to spill over into all vaccinations, and we're seeing more and more that parents are finding reasons to make the exception to not vaccinate their children, which to me is the scariest part.
Yeah, I think I've had different feelings about RFK Jr.'s leadership of HHS. I've actually been really thrilled about a lot of the questions that he's been asking and the investigations that he's been launching, because I think it's important to look at vaccines on a case-by-case basis, and that is something that he said. He hasn't said, I don't support any vaccine, but I want to make sure that we're doing individual risk assessments, that we are actually doing blind studies to determine whether or not they're safe. And some of the things specifically that he's been looking at when it comes to the childhood vaccination schedule is one, the COVID vaccine, which apparently Susan Monterez behind closed doors was advocating for keeping in the childhood vaccine schedule, even though children are at the lowest risk for severe infection or death from COVID-19. And then another one that catches a lot of people's attention is the Hep B vaccine. Hepatitis B in infants is passed on from mothers who have not gotten treatment for hepatitis B. And yet, over the years, the CDC has recommended it for all infants. And so parents are asking, well, if I'm not engaged in a high-risk lifestyle, if I'm not someone who's tested positive for hepatitis B, why does that need to be one of the dozens of vaccines that I'm supposed to give my infant in their first days of life? So I think asking those questions and looking at individual risk assessments is actually something that parents are really excited about, and that's why RFK's Make America Healthy Again platform has been able to cross political lines. And so when he says, I'm depoliticizing the agency, I actually think that he's correct, that he is looking at each individual public health policy and trying to determine whether this was done because it was the right thing to do or because, one, people were making money off of it, whether that was through big pharma donations or the revolving door between HHS and big pharma, or whether it was through people like Dr. Fauci who were openly funding gain-of-function research and then tried to lie to the American people about it when the pandemic broke out. That's something where when we look at the fact that chronic illness in children is higher than ever, obesity in children is higher than ever, we have a very unhealthy country, I think it's great that somebody's asking those questions.
Yeah, I think the thing that probably scared a lot of the senators there yesterday, and I'm speaking from perspective of also having a 4-year-old, is just that when we start talking about states making their own decisions wholly, which is largely, a Republican standing point is they want to leave more autonomy. You're seeing what's happening in Florida right now. They want to get rid of all mandated vaccines in the state. And so to me, when you open up that Pandora's box, then you can have an incident like we saw in Texas earlier this year, where a parent decided not to get her kids the measles shot, and then her kid died at 6 years old. And I think, as a party that largely touts being family first, to not protect the most vulnerable populations, which to me include kids or vulnerable teachers at school that are teaching your kids, by allowing it to be up to the states in this way. And I know that RFK hasn't said, let states do whatever they want, but you're starting to see Pandora's box open based on the fact that we are getting rid of people and putting lack of trust in the CDC. And mind you, I understand that the ball was dropped with COVID. Like, I agree. I'm not the person that got 20 shots in a row and will continue to. I got the mandated ones in order to keep my job. But I think that now that we're here, it's kind of like everything can't be blamed on COVID. We have to remember that these things have saved lives for decades and been a staple. And so Hep B, happy to look at certain cases, but I think that some local leadership is taking it too far, and it could be a rabbit hole that we can't come back from when measles starts showing back up in our elementary schools.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And I think, the reason why COVID was such an important part of people's lack of trust in the public health bureaucracy was because what RFK Jr. said in that hearing, which was mischaracterized by one of the Republican senators, which is that there were more deaths due to side effects effectively from the lockdowns than there were COVID deaths. So things like suicides, people who didn't get cancer screenings, things like that actually were higher than the number of lives that were saved from the lockdowns. So, I mean, that's a key part of why people feel like we were really misled and now we can't trust these people anymore. And I think to blame RFK Jr. for that lack of trust kind of misses the point.
Yeah, we're going to definitely keep talking about this. But coming up, the Attorney General for Washington, D.C. is suing the Trump administration why he says the president's deployment of the National Guard troops to the district is against the law. We'll be right back.